We're working very much on that. We're trying to get the war stopped, that horrible war that's going on in Ukraine, with Russia, Ukraine. We're going to, we've got a little progress. It's a tough one. It's a nasty one. It's nasty. People are being killed at levels that nobody's ever seen. You know, it's very level fields, and the only thing that stops a bullet is a body, a human body. And the number of soldiers that are being killed on both sides is astronomical. I've never seen anything like that. And rapidly, I get reports every week, and it's not even, you know, it's like just they're going down. Nobody's seen anything like it. It's a very flat surface, a very flat land. That's why it's great farming land. It's the breadbasket for the world, actually. But it's very flat, and there's nothing to stop a bullet but a body. There's no protection, no nothing, and it's what's happening there is far worse than people are reporting for both sides. So we're going to do our best, and we've been doing our best, and we'll see what happens. But since the election, I've been working every day to put the world at ease a little bit, to get rid of the wars. We had no wars when I left office, and now it's the whole world is blowing up. But think of it, 4 years ago, we had no wars. You didn't have Russia going into Ukraine. They wouldn't have done it. They weren't even thinking about it. When they saw what happened in Afghanistan, I think they gave them an idea. But they wouldn't have done it. They would have never gone. President Putin would have never gone in. And now you look at all those people are dead. All those cities are destroyed. You know, it's nice to say they want their land back, but the cities are largely destroyed. They've left Kiev because probably maybe they want to use it or occupy it, but they haven't done it. They've done a lot of damage, but relatively compared to the other cities, very little. But many of those cities are gone. Those beautiful towers, those beautiful buildings that they had are now laying on their sides, destroyed, totally destroyed. The turrets and all of the magnificent 1,000-year-old, 2,000-year-old structures that were very strong are blown to smithereens. You look at some of those cities and not one building standing. So, you know, when you say take over the country, take over what? Take over what? That's a 100-year rebuild. Take 100 years to rebuild it, and you can never have it the way it was. What a shame. It should have never happened. It would have never happened. If I were president, that war would have never happened. But now their time is taken up with Ukraine, and we'd like to get them to stop on Ukraine, and Ukraine stop also. As you know, when I went to the cathedral, which was fantastic, the job that they've done in France, and the job that Macron, you know, Emmanuel did. He did a phenomenal job on the rebuilding of that cathedral. It's magnificent, and they did a great thing. And they had great respect for our country. They treated me, meaning I'm the country, I'm the representative of our country, and we were treated with great respect. And one of the people that came to pay his respects is, as you know, Ukraine, Zelensky. And he would like to have peace. He wants peace. Everyone's being killed. It's the worst carnage that this world has seen since World War II. I've had pictures of fields where bodies are lying on top of bodies. Looks like the old pictures of the Civil War, where just bodies are all over. Just if you saw those pictures, you'd feel more strongly about it. It's got to stop. And we're trying to get it to stop. Well, we're gonna see. We're going to be talking. We'll be talking to President Putin, and we'll be talking to the representatives, Zelensky, and representatives from Ukraine. We got to stop it. It's carnage.
President, one quick question on Ukraine. You mentioned that some of the areas are already decimated. Do you believe that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia?
Well, I'm going to let you know that after I have my first meeting. But a lot of that territory, when you look at what's happened to those, I mean, there are cities that there's not a building standing. It's a demolition site. There's not a building standing. So people can't go back to those cities. There's nothing there. It's just rubble. Just like when I knocked down a building in Manhattan, which is actually, this is worse, actually, because we do it step by step. This thing has just got demolished. And by the way, in those buildings are many people. Many people were in those buildings. You know, when they say the number in Ukraine is going to be a much higher number of death, is going to be a much higher number than you're hearing. You know, they're big buildings. This is what I did very well. And these are very long buildings. They're 15 to 20 stories high. They're massive buildings. I was surprised at how big. And they're flattened like a pancake. 1 or 2 bombs hit them and they just collapse. And they'd say, nobody was hurt. Well, nobody knows who was in those buildings. There were a lot of people in those buildings. They're going to find that when they start doing the removal. Many more people are being killed in the Ukraine war with Russia than is being reported, and that includes soldiers. The soldiers are being, it's a carnage that we haven't seen since the Second World War. It's got to be stopped, and I'm doing my best to stop it.
Did you invite Zelensky to the inauguration?
No, but if he'd like to come, I'd like to have him. I mean, I didn't invite him, no. I think actually more difficult is going to be the Russia-Ukraine situation. I see that as more difficult.
When you say there will be
I don't think they should have allowed missiles to be shot 200 miles into Russia. I think that was a bad thing. And that brought the Koreans in, you know, North Korea, another man I get along with very well. I'm the only one that does. But that did a lot of bad things. I don't think that should have been allowed. Not when there's a possibility, and certainly not just weeks before I take over. Why would they do that without asking me what I thought? I wouldn't have had them do that. I think that was a big mistake they made.
Will you reverse that decision when you're in office to let those
I might, yeah.
missiles be
I thought it was a very stupid thing to do.
What should Zelensky, if anything, be prepared to give up to end this
He
war?
should be prepared to make a deal. That's all. Got to be a deal. No, got to be a deal. Too many people being killed. That is a war that's hard. Too many people. Got to make a deal. And Putin has to make a deal too.
What deal would
Do you
what
think-
would
yeah.
you
Putin
suggest?
has to make a deal, and Putin would have never gone in if I was president. If I was president, we wouldn't have had inflation. Our oil prices would have been lower. I had a good relationship with Putin. He would, despite the Russia hoax, which made it more difficult. If we had that election, if it were an honorable election, we wouldn't have had any of the problems that we're talking about right now. Putin would have never gone in.
Based on
Will you have to make that
based
deal
on
to
your
give up
understanding
his
of that.
office? Do you still? You said
Will
that you
you
could make
ask-
that deal before you take office. Do you still think you could make that deal?
I'm going to try.